everybody. We're going to be talking about exercise, some kind of simple concepts to start breaking down in a little bit more detail. So Justin Swinger's here to help us. He's the owner, head coach at Gorilla CrossFit.
Cool. So we get a lot of questions on when people first start working out or haven't worked out in a while, and they say, I don't even know where to start or how do I approach my training. So when people also start it, they like to do it at home sometimes, or they go to a gym where they don't necessarily have a coach. So I just want to introduce three very simple concepts to help you get an idea of the kinds of movements and way you should be training. So the three things to remember are variance, functional movements, and then intensity. And this is straight out of the CrossFit playbook, and I think it's important to note that a lot of people see CrossFit maybe on like ESPN or on TV, and they think it's for very young, fit people. In fact, the methodology and the concepts apply to everyone. In fact, there's a great statement within CrossFit. They say the needs of an Olympic athlete and the needs of my grandmother vary by degree, not by kind. Meaning they should both be squatting, but the Olympic athlete may have 600 pounds and my grandma may have a PVC pipe squatting to a box. But the movement shouldn't change. So let's start with variance. We have three things we want to pull from variance. We have loaded movements, we have unloaded movements, and then we have what we would just call cardio. So a loaded movement would be using something like a barbell or a dumbbell or a kettlebell. Unloaded would be just body weight, a body weight squat, which we'll get into in a little bit, sit-ups, push-ups, anything like that. And then cardio, which you're typically going to be thinking about running, rowing, walking, jumping ropes, swimming, things along that line. So we take all of these three areas of movements and we pull from them only movements that we deem to be functional. What is a functional movement? It's a movement that you would see naturally in life, and it's basically a core to extremity movement. So we're going to start with a squat today because it's the most functional thing we can think of. It's basically standing from a seated position. We all do that multiple times a day. We'll get into deadlifts later on. A deadlift is nothing more than picking something up off the ground safely. So we get more bang for our buck when we do functional movements. An example of a not a functional movement would be a tricep extension. Right? You see people do this in the gym all the time in front of the mirrors. Well, I'm just using one muscle group and one joint. And in life, I rarely ever do this motion. Now, I'm not talking about moving my hands when I'm talking. That's not really of any significance. I'm talking about picking up your kids, picking up groceries. You drop something on the floor, you need to pick it up, or getting up off of the floor. These very basic movements that are very much built into our DNA. So that's the functional part, and then the intensity part. So this is what scares people off quite a bit. But we know that growth only happens outside of our comfort zone. So early on, we're not too worried about this. We're worried about getting variance and functional movements mastered. So we follow a three-step approach: mechanics of the movement, then consistency of those movements, and then intensity. But ultimately, we got to put you outside your comfort zone if we want to see any real change. And so this is completely relative. Again, we talked about my grandmother and the Olympic athlete. Their versions of intensity are wildly different, and that's okay. That's expected, but that's the approach. So if you're putting together your own training program, you're looking for advice, or if something is good or bad, ask yourself: is there variance? Are the movements I'm doing functional? And do I have a place to put in intensity down the road? If you start with this as your blueprint, you can put together a solid training program. Okay? So next, let's do a little workout that you guys can do at home.